Welcome to the Relational Recovery podcast. I'm your host, Wes Thompson, joined by my co-host, Austin Hill. Today, we're talking about the social impact of addiction. So we hope this is helpful. And thanks for listening. Hello, Austin.
Hey, Wes, how are you?
I'm doing well today, man. Today, we're going to talk about the social impact of addiction. I think one of the things that we talk about at the Refuge a lot is obviously not only the challenges of addiction and how we can get better, but I think one of the unique things that we really try to value is the community component when it comes to recovery. And that really gets into what we're talking about today. And the big idea here is, right, addiction isn't just a private struggle. It ripples into relationships, families, and communities. There's a relational and societal impact. And I think why that's really significant is if we only treat addiction as an individual pursuit. In other words, if it's just about me getting better, I would argue that it's hard for that to be long lasting because we are relational beings. And so I think a lot of addiction recovery, the long term, is to build back healthy relationships. And so if I go into treatment and I get sober, but I don't build a healthy network, a healthy community, and healthy relationships, the long-term sustainability of my addiction struggle is going to be really difficult. And so that's what we try to do at the Refuge significantly, is not only to work on sobriety techniques and focusing on substance use, but we focus a lot on building healthy relationships and repairing broken ones where we're able to. So that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, because I think this is a really important topic. And I think it's one that in the chaos of addiction sometimes gets overlooked. We live in a society that is radically individualized. And I would argue that in order to be a healthy human being, I have to have healthy relationships. And so that most certainly has a huge role to play in recovery from any sort of addiction. So that's where we're at. That's what we're talking about. I'm curious, what thoughts are percolating, for you as you think about that.
I think when some people hear social impact, or there's like sometimes a reaction of, it's like, well, that's like, who cares? Like, now we're just getting too theoretical. And the reality is like, we are, because we are relational people. Like that's no matter if you're an introvert, extrovert, doesn't matter. If you like talking, if you don't, like, we are relational. So if I am healthy or unhealthy, I'm going to have an impact on the society that I'm a part of. So it's not like this, don't think so big about society that it's this group of people that I'll never impact. When we're talking about, what we're talking about here in society impact is your sphere of influence. That's the impact we're talking about, because that's the impact that you can control, is the one there. You can't control what happens in Indiana. You can't even control what happens in the next block over. You can only control how you respond in the room you're in right now. So the room you're in right now, with the people you're with, that's the society we're talking about. So don't blow it out. Like, if someone's like, well, this is a topic I don't need to care about or worry about because I don't affect society. Yes, you do. Because of what we're talking about, the people you are doing life with right now.
Yeah. And I think a life well lived is a life where it isn't just all about us. And unfortunately, in the chaos of addiction, because we're trying to survive, and because it can bring about a lot of chaos, both personally and just in the world around us, it tends to be a self-absorbed issue, especially at first. And so what we're arguing for is this idea that really a life well lived is one where we're contributing to society and we're contributing to those relationships around us in a way that it's fascinating. And I think this is one of the unique aspects of Christianity is Christ talks about this in the Bible, where it's like, in order to gain your life, you must lose it. And how that applies here is it's like, to be really fulfilled and to be healthy long term, I have to realize that I find myself when it's not all about me. I've got to come to a place where I'm serving others, contributing to the world around me, contributing to that sphere of influence, like you just said, those people around me. When I'm giving myself to others, I actually find fulfillment in myself. And that's really I think the toxic aspect of any sort of narcissistic way of living is that when I'm self-absorbed, a lot of us can think, well, when you look at it just very black and white, it seems to make sense. I need to care for me. I need to take care of me. It's about me getting better. It's about me getting healthy. And that surely is a part of it. But if that's the whole story, that doesn't end well. The sustainable, healthy living has to get to a point where we realize that we are more than just an isolated unit in the world. We're called to contribute to the betterment of not only ourselves, but the people around us. And that's what we're talking about. And unfortunately, when it comes to addiction, a lot of those relationships are broken. And a lot of the times, we're not contributing to the world around us. We're actually costing and detrimental to the relationships around us. And so if we don't focus on building those healthy relationships, whether it's with work or with family or with a spouse or with a significant other, with friends, with our neighbors, etc., if we don't focus on rebuilding those, then I don't think that sustainable recovery is on the table, because those things have to be addressed. They're incredibly important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's one of the, because we're talking about the foundational things to have the foundational thing in a healthy relationship is trust. And at the core of addiction is the breakdown of trust, is the destruction of trust.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't have to just be drugs or alcohol, but like any addiction, it's the destruction of trust.
Yeah. I felt betrayed. Maybe people significant to me, maybe my parents, whatever, growing up. The stories are different, but similar. Maybe I felt trust was broken, but that story tends to repeat itself. And then I become untrustworthy to others because I don't trust myself and I don't trust others. And so I become untrustworthy. And that spirals, doesn't it? It spirals into unhealthy ways of coping with my brokenness. And that's what addiction manifests as. And so relationships break down. I become isolated, right? I lose any social capital with the people around me. So the people I find myself around aren't necessarily healthy or helpful. I get in these risky environments with peers. My identity, who I believe I am, gets disrupted. So I have a really negative view of self. And there's stigma around all this behavior. So now people look at me and they see me only as an addict. And it just spirals into these unhealthy routines that all of a sudden I'm finding myself with legal issues. Maybe I'm in the court system and in the penal system. It's hard to keep a job. You can see where if we don't focus on our social health and growth as it relates to addiction, it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be sustainable.
When you say social growth, you're talking about, like, this is one of those examples of, to grow socially doesn't mean like it's not a popularity contest or to grow in importance or power. It's about deepening a relationship with a group of people and making that circle a little bigger all the time. Because if I'm healthy, I'm able to have, the healthier I am, the more healthy relationships I'm able to have numerically. I'm able to have more healthy relationships with more people.
Absolutely. And I think about it from like a macro and micro level, or like a big view and a small view. Like We tend to think about society and it feels arbitrary, but let's make it simple. Like if this was, a couple few thousand years ago, and we were like in a tribe, a small group of people, right? That little community, that little tribe would be working together to survive, right? And everybody would have to contribute to their survival. Well, our society is way more complicated than that, but it's still essentially the same thing. And so what happens is like the goal is that we're all contributing, right? We're all a contributing member of society, to our tribe, to the people around us. And one of the destructive aspects of addiction is we cease to be a productive contributor to society. We are a drain on society.
Mm.
And so, and oftentimes that comes from us not being able to take care of ourselves, and then we can't take care of others, and we end up, in worst case, like stealing from others and being a cost on the societal systems, whether it's, tax dollars are now being used to pay for us, and so on and so forth. And so the goal is to go from being a drain on society to being a contribution to society. And that's dignifying. It's fulfilling. And anyone who's struggling with addiction, they're not less than, but it's realizing that they have gifts, talents, and abilities to be able to contribute. And that's what I mean that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that we can't find sustainable purpose just in us being healthy. It's us getting healthy and then realizing we're a part of a bigger group. We're part of a bigger picture. And when we begin to contribute is whenever we really get outside of ourselves and it becomes sustainable. Then there's just life. It's life-giving. It's healthier and better. And yeah, there's some people in our society that may not have the capacity to do that, but most people struggling with addictions have the capacity. They've gotten hung up. They've gotten into a bad place for various reasons, but there's a path forward for many to get healthier, to get better, and to contribute to society. And that ultimately is not only, and my argument is that's not only good for society, that's good for them.
Yeah, because it's a reciprocal growth.
Exactly. Say more to that.
So what comes to mind for me is the part where Jesus talks about it's better to give than to receive. And that just sounds kind of counterintuitive, because if I'm just giving all the time, then I'll never receive anything. But if we are in a community of people, imperfect people, where some people are giving more and receiving less, and vice versa, I am supposed to be giving because I know that it is good, not because I know that I'll get something back. I'm going to give not expecting something in return, not because I'm going to keep track of it, but it's because I know that this is good for me and good for you. In the if we are in a healthy relationship, this is a good way to gauge if you're in healthy relationships, is if you are the only one giving in a relationship, there's something that's unequal. There's something that needs to be addressed. And that doesn't mean you need to end the relationship. It just means something needs to be talked about and brought up. It's a conversation to be had. So by giving out of a surplus or abundance of what I am confident in, so I'm giving to a community because I know it's important, not because I know I'll get something back. It's just like this permission to others. So I want to model that too. And it's not, and when I say reciprocal, it means if I'm going to give, that means I need to learn and be okay with receiving. Because if I am just giving and I feel like it's wrong to receive, you're missing the point of being interdependent on each other. So instead of being there is going back to the analogy you have, where there's people who are a drain on society and those who are a contributor to it. There's seasons in life when we need to take something because we need that extra help. It's not all the time, but there's there's an ebb and a flow to it, where we have to be okay with, I have a weakness, or I'm in a low spot, I'm going to need some extra help or support. because there's a joy of giving to others when they are in that low spot, when they need that extra support.
Yeah.
So it's like a personal story would be like my cousin was in a was in an accident with his in-laws, and his father-in-law passed away because of the accident. And we've been talking a lot, where he's just been like talking through unloading stuff, and I'm able to help support him because I want to be there for my cousin because I love him. I want him to be okay. I don't feel like, oh, I'm doing this just so, because I know one day I'll be able to, spill my, dump on him for something. It's not because I genuinely care for him. It doesn't feel like an obligation. It feels like something I want to do because he's in a tough spot.
Yeah. Does it feel good though to feel like you can help somebody in that way?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it's one of those I can't. I don't understand. I have a hard time understanding if someone is it's no, I don't. I feel bad when I'm giving. That doesn't compute for me. I think that's why I think people who have this victim mentality or hyper selfish and self-centered, it just doesn't compute. Not because I'm super special, but I think it's because I've seen the benefits in the people around me to being a more selfless person, because it creates the opportunity to have a deeper relationship where I am able to give and receive in a good way. And I'm not constantly trying to get from others, take from others, because I have to get mine because I'm not going to get any if I don't do that. I know that there's going to be times when people will give to me, and I know there's going to be times when I'm going to give to them.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's what we're saying is it's not giving because I have to, but it's realizing that giving of myself is actually what brings the fulfillment that we're searching. I think that's how God made us, because it's God's essence. Genesis talks about we're made in God's image, and God has existed as Trinity, Father, Spirit, Son, which means God's existed eternally in this loving relationship within himself, giving and receiving. And so it's that reciprocal nature that you're talking about earlier, that this giving and receiving that we find life in. If we're only taking, not life-giving. If we're only giving, not life-giving. But just like using the tribe example, if you're a part of a tribe and everybody's taking, that tribe's not going to survive. But people are going to get sick. People are going to get hurt, and they're going to have to help each other out. And they're going to have to work on it. And some people are going to contribute more during certain times, and other people are going to need more at certain times, to your point earlier. But the fact is, when the tribe succeeds, everybody succeeds. When our society succeeds, we all succeed. But we have to engage. We have to show up. We have to try to be as healthy as we can get. And so to maybe make this more practical, I think what we're trying to say is what we're aiming for at the refuge. And if anyone listening that's either at the refuge or in recovery, what we're arguing for is engaging in a healthy relationship and community is a big part of recovery. If you're only focused on getting better for yourself, it's not going to be sustainable long term. And so even if you're listening and you know somebody who's struggling and they need help, one of the best ways to start is for them to be a part of a community. I'll give you a quick example. I know somebody who's dear to me who is struggling immensely, to the point of suicide, recently. And he was isolated, and we were able to help him get back into a healthy rhythm of connection and relationships. And we were really worried about him, obviously. And it's amazing how just not being isolated has helped dramatically in this person's mental health, sense of self. I mean, even just in how they're taking care of themselves, showering, shaving, happy, talking more. I mean, I'm not saying it's fixed everything and it's perfect. My point is I think in our culture sometimes, because it's radically individualistic, we can overlook. We talk about it all the time on this podcast, and it's for this very reason, that if we don't prioritize community, we are not going we're not going to finish well. So if you find yourself like, man, I don't want to like get to know that person, or I don't want to engage. I'm just about me. I'm just here at the refuge for myself, or I just want to get better myself. I mean, yeah, I get it. I want to be healthy too. I get wanting to take care of yourself. But what I'm arguing is, if you really want to take care of yourself, you need to you need to give yourself to other people as well. That's going to be a part of sustainable health.
It is taking care of yourself and owning your crap is a priority. It is not the only thing.
Yes.
It is a priority. It is not the only thing. Something that came to mind for me when we are talking about this reciprocal nature of a healthy community, of healthy relationships, if you catch yourself putting people in these absolute categories, like there's givers and takers, there's victims, and like there's the oppressed and the oppressors. What is unique about specifically Christians, a Christian worldview, is we are all both of them. It just depends on how much we are of one. So what I mean is, like, if we're talking about giving and taking, I am a giver and a taker. And why that's important is, if I think that the world is split up between just givers and just takers, I will do whatever I can to be in the one that I think is most important, and demonize or dehumanize people on the other side, which is going to break down trust, which is going to break down community. And if I'm in a group of people and I believe that, there's only either or, you're either a giver or a taker, then I have to get all the takers out of this group. I have to build walls and I have to protect from all the givers. But the reality is, like, I am a giver and a taker all the time, because that's how people work. And if you find yourself, if you go into that, and if you find yourself going into that mentality in a group of people or in relationships, like, well, I have to be the giver, then you're going to break down the relationship, because you can't receive anything, because the other person is also wants to be a giver, and they keep trying to give of themselves to you, and you deny it all the time. You're going to break that relationship down. It's going to slowly deteriorate. So we are givers and takers. There's not a either or. That's why I think something is, churches are not full of good people or just bad people. It's full of good and bad people who love Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both. We are good and bad at the same time.
Yeah. And so if you're listening and you're struggling with this, or maybe you feel conflicted with the people that you're around, or you feel alone, I would encourage you to reach out to anyone you think. I mean, there's got to be somebody that you can think of that can point you in the right direction. Reach out to us at the Refuge. Show up at Veritas West in Columbus. There's a lot of people in recovery there. But if we're going to be sustainably healthy, it's not going to be an isolated pursuit. And that's probably what breaks my heart most about addiction, is it tends to isolate people. And isolation is just as bad as the addiction itself. It's just as bad. It's just as bad. And so now you're dealing with multiple things, right? You're dealing with an addiction and you're dealing with being isolated. So if we're going to get healthy, and even people, again, I just mentioned an example a minute ago. If you find yourself isolated, it's just as bad as an addictive behavior. So we've got to engage. That's why, peer recovery has become such a popular thing in the recovery communities, because walking alongside others that are on a similar journey is powerful, because then you help each other. There's a sense of accountability. There's a sense of being known. There's a sense of doing hard things together. Somebody who's going to challenge you when you're struggling, but also encouraging you when you're struggling. We all need that. I need that. And so if you find yourself isolated, take the courageous step of reaching out to somebody and asking for help. One of the things we see at the refuge that breaks my heart is people will go through months and months of recovery, then leave and they're sober and they've got friends, but then they tend to sometimes isolate. And when you're alone, when I'm alone, when any of us are alone for an extended period of time, we tend to, the worst parts of us tend to manifest. It's not a good place to be. We need, in order for us to be okay, we've got to be in relationships with other people. And so if you find yourself consistently isolating or consistently like looking at all the faults in everybody else and just being focused on yourself, I would caution you that is not a recipe towards sustainable health and recovery.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's interesting that the thing that we most desperately want, to be known by someone else deeply and to know them deeply, we almost naturally self-sabotage it if we're unhealthy. So the thing that we need to be healthy is to have the courage to put ourselves out there, to put ourselves in situations that could hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because that connection with other people, it's worth the pain and risk of going out there and being rejected. It's worth that because you're not going to get rejected all the time. And when you find that group of people that is welcoming, that you do deeply connect with, it's worth the pain to find that group. It's worth the pain.
Yeah. This is why AA is so powerful. I mean, it was started as a Christian ministry, but AA is powerful because you're getting in a group of people, i.e. community. You're getting in a group, you're putting yourself out there with a group of people and being vulnerable. And that's what every human soul needs. Getting better is not an isolated pursuit.
And what does being vulnerable with a group of people consistently do? It builds your courage. It builds your resiliency. It helps you clarify who you say, like your identity and what's important to you. Like that's what those things do. It helps you become a healthier person, which is what you need when you are isolated, is a healthy person to come alongside you. So there are those reciprocal things, those products, the what is produced when you put yourself out there, when you seek out community and connection. You get to work the muscles that are needed and required to become a healthier person. So if you're like, I don't know how to, like, if there's a fear, it's like, there's nobody out there for me, or I'm like, I don't have that skill set. Exactly. You're going to have to lean into that. You're going to have to practice those things. It's just like sports. If you pick up a bat for the first time and you've never swung it before, it's going to look really bad the first couple of times, but it takes that repetition. In order to be a good hitter, you have to take a lot of swings. You don't decide, I'm going to be a good hitter, and then you're an excellent hitter just because you thought it. So you have to put it into practice.
Yeah. Exactly. And then what you'll find is you have skills and gifts that others don't, and then you can help them just like they're helping you. And that's the beauty. And that's the beauty of it. We don't grow by ourselves. We have to engage in relationships. And I know that we say this a lot, but it's because it's so important, and it's the easiest. For some reason, it's the easiest thing for a lot of people to minimize. And so I would just ask anyone listening, who are the people you're listening to? And if you were to heed their counsel, does it lead you towards more isolation, or does it lead you to more flourishing in relationships with others? Because some of us have allowed people to speak into us. And unfortunately, sometimes it's close people like parents or spouses or close friends. But maybe it's gotten to a point where they're not giving you the advice that leads you to flourishing. Maybe they're telling you what you want to hear, but it keeps leading you back to this pit of isolation and addiction. And so maybe you need to find some people that are gonna challenge you. Good friends and good parents and good people that love you. True love disciplines. In other words, if people really love you, they're not gonna just clap whenever you fail and whenever you're killing yourself. Surround yourself with people that are going to push you to be better.
Yeah.
That's what I need. And I think that's what we all need. That's what we all need. So in summary, right, life's not meant to be lived alone. And this is why the work of what we do at the Refuge is unique and valuable, because it's not about just getting sober, but it's about learning how to live a full life. And that's a life with others. A big part of recovery is addressing the social barriers created by addiction. So reach out if you need help or if you know someone who's struggling, and consider coming to the Refuge if that's something that you need. But our prayer is that we all grow, not only in our personal health, but knowing that our personal health is predicated on the fact that we need to be in relationships. So that's my hope and prayer for all of us. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Relational Recovery Podcast. We'll be back soon with a new conversation. We'll see you then.